It began as a quiet 4th of July in central Texas. Families gathered around lakes, ranches, and riverbanks to watch fireworks bloom in the warm, humid air. Children splashed in the Guadalupe River, their laughter echoing across limestone bluffs and cypress-lined banks. Music floated through the air as sparklers lit up the darkening sky. Many campers and vacationers had come to the hill country to escape the cities, seeking the solace of the rivers and the cool summer breeze under the endless Texas sky. But as dusk fell, the atmosphere shifted. Clouds gathered low on the horizon, darkening the purple twilight with an ominous heaviness. At first, some thought it was wind or distant thunder. Screams and cries filled the night air as floodwaters slammed into cabins, lifting them off their foundations. Some campers clung to rafters, others scrambled onto roofs or trees in a desperate attempt to stay above the rising water. But when they looked out their windows, they saw entire trees uprooted and carried away by walls of water. Cabins, cars, picnic tables, anything not deeply anchored, began to disappear into the muddy chaos. By late evening, distant rumbles of thunder began to compete with the cracks of fireworks. Search and rescue teams from across the state converged on Kerr County and surrounding areas, deploying boats, airboats, drones, and even horseback teams to reach survivors. Vehicles were lodged in treetops like children's toys. Family heirlooms, photo albums, clothes, and furniture floated in backwaters or lay scattered along muddy banks. Locals checked their weather apps, noting warnings of heavy rainfall, but seeing no immediate cause for alarm. At Camp Mystic, counselors tearfully recounted how they had tried to save the girls as the cabins broke away. Bulletin boards filled with photos and handwritten pleas. "Have you seen my daughter? Last seen wearing a pink t-shirt and denim shorts." Strangers and neighbors embraced, weeping together over shared loss and uncertainty. By the morning of July 6th, at least 68 people were confirmed dead in Kerr County alone. Statewide, the death toll surpassed 95, making it one of the deadliest floods in Texas history. The siblings were later found together, shivering but alive, by a Texas game warden patrol. Her quick thinking saved at least 6 campers before the structure was finally torn away. FEMA dispatched rapid response teams, and National Guard units arrived to support local law enforcement and search operations. H-E-B, the Texas grocery chain renowned for community support, set up mobile kitchens and distributed meals. Whataburger sent truckloads of food. Volunteers arrived from San Antonio, Austin, and beyond, offering everything from bottled water to warm blankets and prayers. Critics slammed county officials for ignoring calls to install outdoor siren systems. The hill country, sometimes called Flash Flood Alley, has always been prone to sudden flooding, but this event stood out for its ferocity and speed. Neighbors who had barely spoken before the floods now leaned on each other, sharing meals and tools, lending shoulders to cry on. Local nonprofits, churches, and organizations like Southern Smoke Foundation coordinated donations of food, clothing, and hygiene supplies. Restaurants across Austin and San Antonio donated a portion of their profits to relief funds. Even school children in distant cities wrote letters and packed care boxes for affected families. Celebrity Texans, including Matthew McConaughey, Jennifer Garner, and Shakira, used their platforms to draw attention to the needs of flood survivors and encourage donations. Hundreds gathered, many clutching candles, wearing t-shirts bearing the names of loved ones. The state legislature began drafting proposals for emergency preparedness reforms, including grant funding for rural warning systems and flood-resistant infrastructure. Experts called for stronger floodplain management policies, improved evacuation infrastructure, and enhanced weather forecasting capabilities. "I hear their voices every night," she wrote. Her entry was later shared with the family's permission, becoming a symbol of the heartbreak so many carried. When asked why he stayed, he said, "I've lived here 70 years. The river took, but the river gives too. We start again." In a state known for pride and self-reliance, there was a newfound recognition that nature's power could overwhelm even the most resilient communities. Empty lots mark where cabins once stood. Stripped trees bear silent witness to the surge that tore through so many lives. Pastors, rabbis, and spiritual leaders from different traditions offered prayers, while musicians played hymns and folk songs. Camp Mystic has already announced it will rebuild, stronger, safer, and more prepared. Local artisans create jewelry and crafts from salvaged wood and metal, selling them to support flood survivors. The collective grief was almost too heavy to bear. Future generations will learn about the summer of 2025, not just as a flood, but as a testament to community, courage, and the enduring fight against nature's unpredictability. Through these moments, Texans show the world what it means to face loss and come back together, stronger than before. They are a source of life, recreation, and peace. But they are also a reminder: respect, preparation, and unity are the true defenses against nature's fiercest storms. But in its aftermath, a deeper truth emerged, one that speaks to the soul of Texas and the indomitable spirit of its people. When the waters recede, love remains stronger than the currents ready to rebuild what was lost. "We can rebuild the house," Maria Garcia told reporters, holding her children close. "But I can't rebuild my family. We are still here. That is enough. We're all in this together." Underneath layers of tragedy were countless acts of courage, compassion, and unity that transcended politics and backgrounds. Some families have chosen to leave their grief too deep to stay. Others have vowed to never abandon their land, no matter the risk. Emergency shelters transitioned into longer-term housing support. Insurance adjusters and FEMA inspectors fanned out to evaluate the destroyed homes and infrastructure. Others pointed to recent cuts in weather service staffing, arguing that a well-funded, well-equipped meteorological system might have given residents crucial extra minutes to escape. Navigating through treacherous currents, he pulled 10 stranded neighbors from roofs and treetops. Exhausted and battered, Joe didn't rest until every last person he could reach was safe. More than 40 people remained missing, including over a dozen children and staff from the camp. Some children were found clinging to tree limbs, their faces pale with shock and exhaustion. Others were still missing, swept downstream into the tangled wilderness. Darkness only compounded the terror. Kerr County, for example, had no outdoor siren system, despite repeated calls from local safety advocates. While flash flood warnings were issued on cell phones and local news stations, many residents, especially those asleep or camping in remote areas with spotty service, never received them. The hill country, so picturesque and tranquil by day, had turned into a death trap under the weight of human oversight and natural ferocity. In just 45 minutes, the Guadalupe River in Hunt surged by over 26 feet. A figure almost unimaginable to those familiar with its usually calm, meandering current. However, what most didn't realize was that the storm system looming over central Texas was no ordinary summer shower. But by then, for some, the warnings came too late. In rural communities, people often rely on word of mouth and physical sirens, but in this case, the silence was deadly. Fed by the remnants of Tropical Storm Barry, the system had stalled directly over the hill country. Pulling in vast swaths of moisture from the Gulf, most people dismissed it at first. After all, Texas is no stranger to summer storms. Few suspected that this night would soon become one of the deadliest and most catastrophic in the state's history. And shallow soils of the hill country, rushing into every gully, creek, and stream, all feeding the larger rivers. The region's unique topography, known for its steep limestone hills and thin, impermeable soil, turned it into a natural funnel. Rain that would have slowly soaked into the ground elsewhere became a violent, churning torrent here. In Kerrville, Hunt, Wimberley, and other small river towns, rain began to fall softly at first, soaking the dusty roads and parched ranch lands. By midnight, rainfall intensified dramatically. The rivers, particularly the Guadalupe, began to swell. The pre-dawn hours of July 5th, water poured down the rocky slopes. Families, sleeping in riverside cabins, woke to a strange roaring sound outside. At Camp Mystic, a girls' summer camp nestled along the Guadalupe River, counselors rushed to wake the girls. Nearby, families gathered their belongings and attempted to flee, but for many it was too late. Roads were already submerged, bridges swept away. As tragedy unfolded, another layer of horror revealed itself. The region's emergency warning systems faltered. The National Weather Service had issued a rare flash flood emergency, the most serious type of flood alert. Compounding the issue, recent budget cuts had reduced the number of meteorologists and support staff at key offices, delaying updates and diminishing the capacity to coordinate rapid warnings. When the sun rose on July 5th, the extent of the destruction slowly became visible. Helicopters hovered over rivers transformed into raging brown seas. The iconic cypress trees that lined the Guadalupe River were stripped bare, some completely uprooted. Bridges lay in twisted heaps, miles downstream. Among the most heart-wrenching scenes were at the summer camps. Official counts rose quickly. Families gathered in community centers, schools, and churches repurposed as temporary shelters and reunification centers. Relief organizations, churches, and local restaurants sprang into action. Amid the devastation, stories of extraordinary bravery began to surface. A retired firefighter named Joe Hernandez, who lived near Hunt, ventured out in a small aluminum fishing boat during the peak of the storm. While a teenage girl, 14-year-old Emily Nguyen, carried her 8-year-old brother on her back for nearly a mile in waist-deep water after their cabin collapsed. At Camp Mystic, Counselor Sarah Gutierrez tied bedsheets into makeshift ropes to help girls climb into the rafters of a partially submerged cabin. By July 6th, President Trump declared a major disaster for Kerr County and other affected regions, unlocking federal funds and resources. The floods also ignited fierce debates about preparedness and climate adaptation. Climate scientists highlighted the increasingly frequent pattern of extreme rainfall events in Texas. Driven by warming oceans and shifting atmospheric currents, as the days wore on, the focus turned to recovery. Among the first community efforts was a joint memorial service at a Kerrville High School gymnasium. In small towns like Ingram, Comfort, and Bandera, residents organized cleanup muckout crews, shoveling mud and debris from homes and businesses. The disaster struck a chord far beyond Central Texas. Texans from Dallas to El Paso rallied in support, holding fundraisers, blood drives, and supply collections. Major sports teams like the San Antonio Spurs and the Dallas Cowboys pledged financial support and hosted community events for displaced families. While many praised the heroism and unity, the flood also served as a grim warning. County officials under intense scrutiny promised to revisit siren installation plans and invest in more robust communication systems. Scientists and environmentalists urged leaders not to overlook the broader context: a warming planet, or intense tropical systems, and an increasing risk of catastrophic flash floods in the hill country. In the weeks after the floods, stories of loss and survival continued to ripple outward. The Garcia family in Kerrville lost their home and all belongings, but were reunited after days apart. A young camp counselor wrote in her diary about her guilt over the girls who didn't make it. Elderly rancher Walt Simmons, who lost his cattle and barn, was found on his porch days later, strumming a guitar and singing softly to the morning sun. Today, as the Guadalupe River returns to a gentle flow and the hills bloom with summer wildflowers again, scars remain. Yet signs of resilience are everywhere. Children play in the mud with donated toys. Communities gather at riversides not only to remember, but to plan, to pray, to envision a future where they are better prepared. The 2025 Central Texas floods will long be remembered not just for the destruction, but for the way they revealed the heart of a community. One volunteer from Dallas put it while serving food in Kerrville: "Water, dose, and tea, care who you voted for or where you came from. The night the rivers rose will always haunt the hill country." The story is not yet over. Every rebuilt home, every returning camper, every cleared trail is another chapter in the shared story of resilience. And in the end, the rivers of Central Texas will always call people to their banks.